I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we travel back in time to the Roman Empire with Robert Eckert. He has written a wonderful book, a real page turner. It is called The Baths of Caracalla. This compelling historical novel delves into the reign of Septimius Severus and the tumultuous life of his son Caracalla, a complex figure torn between aspirations of greatness and uncontrollable rage. Through the author's vivid storytelling, readers are immersed in a world where power struggles, family dynamics, and societal changes are everyday occurrences in ancient Rome. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Bookside Press for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Robert, great to see you here today on
Hey,
Spotlight.
thanks for having me.
This is such an interesting part of world history, such an intriguing aspect of ancient Rome. What made you decide to focus on this story dealing with Caracalla?
Well, I first wrote a book, the Year of Five Emperors, starting with the murder of Commodus, which was Commodus is the emperor who was in Gladiator a few years back, and the fall of the Roman Empire back in the 60s. Well, his story had been done, so I started with when Commodus was assassinated, which was it's called the Year of Five Emperors because there was no clear succession. This was one of the crisis years. There was the year of four emperors after Nero died, and Nero had wiped out most of his family. So then various legions would proclaim their commanders emperor, which started to become a pattern. And in the year of five emperors, people had different ideas about how you should proceed. The Senate elected a nice, stodgy bureaucrat, and then there was another clubby senator who thought that he would take over because all the upper crust people liked him, and then there was Septimius Severus who had legions behind him, and another fellow who thought he could buy some military support with bribes, and then there was Pescennius Niger, who had support from the lower classes. All the people loved him. Well, that didn't do any good in Rome, of course. It's not not exactly giving a spoiler that
Right.
the military is who resolved the situation. And after that, in the time of Septimius Severus, Rome has become much more nakedly a military dictatorship.
Mhm.
Of course, military dictatorship was always a big part of what Rome was about, but a lot of its pretensions to be a rule of law society started to disappear during the time of the Severans. And Caracalla, in his own way, was one of the most damaging of the emperors. He wasn't as crazy as like a Caligula or a Nero. But in the time of Caligula or Nero, if you were living out in the provinces, you didn't care that there was a bad emperor at the top. The state bureaucracy sort of chugged along; it ran itself. You were only in danger from them if you were in Rome, in the center of power. Now, Caracalla toured around the empire and would go on his rampages and did a lot of just foundational damage to the institutions of the empire. The whole system was starting to very visibly break down in his time, and this sort of spiraled until you got to the third big crisis year, the year of six emperors, which is when Rome started to have coups d'états and attempted coups d'états just chronically for a good half century, and was really in chaos. Now this is sort of midway in the decline. The decline was starting with Commodus. He was after the five good emperors who lived to an old age and died in bed, which was not all that usual in Roman history, but 5 in a row managed to do it, and they adopted worthy successors. But then the last one, Marcus Aurelius, he had an adopted co-emperor, Lucius Verus, who then died of the plague, and so he had no choice but to leave the throne to his biological son Commodus, and that was a mistake. Because as it turned out repeatedly in Roman history, when you have a little kid who is raised from a young age with the expectation that he's going to have supreme power, he becomes, just one of these arrogant megalomaniacs. And this is what happened to Commodus, and this is what happened to Caracalla too. And especially in his case, he wasn't really sure that he was going to be allowed supreme power, because his father always sort of knew that there was something wrong with him. He felt unloved, and he had all of this suppressed emotion in him, which would burst out in these murderous rages. So he's a very dark character, but he's a very interesting character. It took me a while to sort of find his voice, and make clear what he was like, and also in both of my books, I'm not entirely focused on the plot or on the character so much as on the world building of trying to make Rome come alive. The Rome and the Empire, those are really my central characters. I have a huge cast of these characters, from senators down to slaves, and some of the big time merchants and small time hustlers in between, and barbarians out on the frontier. I want to give everybody sort of lived experience while they are going through these changes that the empire was going through, and try and make the reader have some feel of what it could have been like to live through this kind of period.
Yeah. And I think you've absolutely accomplished that. Caligula, for example, has been turned into multiple films, the story of Caligula. What about Caracalla, the Baths of Caracalla? Have you envisioned this perhaps told on the screen?
Yeah, I could see it. I think it would probably make more like a mini series maybe than a movie. It's a very complicated story. I don't know that it could really be done well in an hour and a half. Now my earlier book, The Year of Five Emperors, originally actually I did try writing that as a screenplay. But then someone with experience in the Hollywood biz read what I had written and did me the very great favor of tearing it to shreds and telling me why this was, and basically the problem was that I was trying to stuff too much in, that I would end up having to tell things rather than show them because I didn't have the time, and characters would appear, and we didn't have time to explain who they were. So, so then she said to me, what you're really wanting to do is write a historical novel. So that's what I did, and it kind of got out of hand. All right, this is the original edition of The Year of Five Emperors, and it's 800 pages. Okay,
wow.
Okay. So
it's tough to turn that into a screenplay.
Yeah, right. And then Bookside Press has put it out more recently, breaking it into 2 halves, which makes
Wonderful.
it a little bit more manageable.
Yep.
With one half devoted to poor Emperor Pertinax. That's the bureaucrat who is nice and capable, but not really able to deal with the violence. And then they did a very, very nice job, especially on the cover here.
Oh, yeah.
This is Baths of Caracalla. Now, this is this scowling image that he has. This is how he wanted to be seen.
Right.
He made sure that sculptors captured his expression, which apparently he was quite famous for going into this horrible scowl, because he was just a very angry man all the time, and he wanted the empire to know that he was, always on the edge of anger. He was
Be
very
respected,
very
or you
much,
can be feared. He wanted to be
yeah.
feared.
He
Yeah.
wanted to be feared. He
Yeah.
did not try to be loved. Now
Yeah.
he was actually loved by the soldiers
Yeah.
because he vastly increased the military budget, and he himself would at least play act as soldier. He didn't actually fight at the front, but he would hang out with the soldiers and eat their bad rations and
Yeah.
and act like he was just one of the guys. And so he did have his supporters,
Mm.
and it's not like the everybody hated him,
Right.
and I spent some time on his giant bathhouse that he built, which is it's 1 million square feet, and the Italians still use it as a venue sometimes. And this is 18 centuries after this thing was built, and it's still, a very magnificent structure. He's
What was the significance of the baths?
Well, the baths were the social center of the day. Everybody had to go take a bath, and you didn't unless you were very very wealthy. You didn't have baths in your home.
Mm.
You went to the baths, and even if you did have baths in your home, you would go to the public baths because this is where you met everybody and had conversations. And
Almost
they,
like
they
they
had
do in
it.
Japan today.
Yes, very,
Yeah.
very, very similar to that, and they had the saying that everybody is the same in the bath.
Yeah.
Referring to the nudity, but also just to the fact that people from every social class would be in the baths and mix, and they would try to converse with each other. So it was an important social institution. Now, uh, the Baths of Caracalla, aside from these giant communal pools, they had also individual bathtubs, which was that was a very new idea at the time. It was very sanitary. It was very well engineered with the flow and the heating, and beautiful artwork on the walls and exercise yards and reading rooms. He really wanted that project to be a lasting monument to his greatness.
Mm.
He did envision himself as a great emperor who was going to leave a mark forever. Of course, the kind of mark that he wanted to leave, he wanted to be a great conqueror,
Mm.
which he never really ended up being. He did at the end of his reign give the Parthian Empire to the east a good kick, which ended up overthrowing the Parthians, which was as we'll see if I ever get around to writing the next volume. This was not actually a good thing for Rome, because then Persia selected a better set of rulers who built a more competent enemy for Rome than what they had to face before. And of course there is also the German barbarians on the north. I talk a little bit about them,
Mm.
but also what's happening is that the breakdown of the institutions, it's also causing a breakdown in the people's faith in the old Roman values and such like. This is a period when Christianity is starting to expand rapidly among several cults. I mean, there were all kinds of new cults coming along because the old beliefs just weren't doing it for people anymore. They were seeing that the old Rome wasn't very vital anymore. I focus, of course, mostly on the Christians because of, historically they ended up taking over. Of course, there were a lot of other religious movements at the time, which I touch on more
You've done
briefly.
an amazing job bringing this chapter, this episode, this period of history to life. The name of the book, folks, is called The Baths of Caracalla. It is a compelling historical novel that delves into the reign of Septimius Severus and the tumultuous life of his son Caracalla, a complex figure torn between his aspirations of greatness and uncontrollable rage. You will feel like you are living back in ancient Rome. You will get a feeling for the environment, the people, the character, and you will just find yourself immersed in this world because of Robert Eckert's wonderful book. Robert, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Well, thank you for having
I,
me.
I appreciate your time. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time until next time on Spotlight.